Hi, how's it going? My name's Bob DeBoo. Today we're going to talk about Coltrane changes, how they relate to the bass, the changes that fuel giant steps and countdown. We're going to break it down. We're going to look at some bass lines by the great Peter Washington to see how he navigates these chord changes. But before we do that, we're going to look at the structure and really try to understand how the Coltrane changes work. So let's get started. First up, we're going to talk about a 2-5-1 and how it relates to countdown. Countdown is based upon the tune up, which is a series of 2-5-1s in keys that are descending in whole steps, and we'll talk about that in a second. Talking about Coltrane changes, once we get the foundation of it and the root progression of it really solidified, then walking over it or under it becomes a lot easier. So, as I said, let's look at a 2-5-1 in the key of B flat first. Okay, so if we're in the key of B flat would be the 1, of course, and so the second note of the B flat major scale is C. That gives us the root of the 2 chord, which in this case is going to be minor. Now the fifth note of the B flat major scale is F, so if you count it up, B flat, 2, 3, 4, 5, that gets you the 5 chord in whatever octave register. Same with the 1, same with the 2, but that gives it the 5 chord of F. And then finally to B flat again, that's our 1. You'll note here that the 1 chord is highlighted in green. That's going to help us further down the road when we get to talking about the Coltrane changes, because it's bouncing around through a few different keys. That's kind of the concept. So again, got to have this down. 2 in the key of B flat is C, 5 is F, and then B flat is 1. So let's first start by playing the root progression to countdown in this key of B flat. So we're just going to play half notes. We're just going to play the roots of the chord at the moment. So we've got C, D flat 7, so we're going to play a D flat. We've got G flat, so play a G flat, up to A, and then to D, F, and then finally to B flat, which is our home key. That's why it's highlighted there in green. Now let's dissect how that root progression is put together and how we can think about it to make it a little bit easier for ourselves to transpose this to other keys and also to walk over. So it's an expanded 2-5-1, like I said earlier. So we're starting on C. C minor is the 2 of B flat, and that'll always give us kind of our starting off point if we know what key we're in, right? Now the next thing up is to think about our goalposts. So in here, right next to me here, you can see in green are our key centers as they bounce around. And let's just play the highlighted green chords right here. So we've got G flat, then we have D natural, and then B flat. Okay, play that ascending now. So that's B flat, D, and then F sharp or G flat. That is an augmented triad. Augmented triads are built of major thirds. So this is B flat to D, that's a major third. A major third above D natural is F sharp or G flat. And if you did that again, you'd be back to B flat, right? If you play it descending, it's the same structure, it's just going down. So G flat down to D, and that gets us to B flat. Now what we want to do is put a 5 chord of each of those keys in front of those keys. So our first chord is going to be G flat, right? So put a D flat in front of it, 5, 1. And you could do that from above too. It doesn't matter the octave, it's more of the motion of the how it's built. D flat to G flat. Now put a 5 in front of D natural, so 5, 1, or A7 to D. And then our final key, our landing, our resting point is B flat, so we're going to put a 5 in front of that. So F, B flat. Okay, so try it again. We're going to do 5, 1 into G flat, 5, 1 into D, 5, 1 into B flat. Great. So the only other thing we need to do to that now is to put that 2 chord in front of all of that. So we've got in the key of B flat, 2 is C minor again. Now let's do a 5, 1 into our first key. So 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. And that gets us the Coltrane matrix, the progression for countdown, which we're going to look at in 3 different keys on the standard changes of the countdown progression now. So now let's look at the main section of countdown. We're leaving out the last 4 measures of this progression just because we're looking at the Coltrane matrix inside of this. So there is 4 bars missing at the bottom of this form, but we're really interested in how the keys are moving. So if you look first, we're going to play in the key of D, and then we move into the key of C, and then we move into the key of B flat. So these are descending in whole steps. Otherwise, we could think about it as the same progression that we just practiced, descending in whole steps. Okay, so let's take it step by step. Our first key that we're going to deal with is the key of D. So you look at these first 4 bars, it ends in D before moving on to the next line. Okay, so if we know we're in the key of D, what's our 2 chord? E minor. Okay, so if we move up a half step, that's going to give us our 5 chord leading into our first home key of B flat. Okay, now we're going down. So if we think about B flat, go down a major third, that gets you G flat. Go down another major third, that gets you into our home key of D. So we're going to play 5-1 into B flat, 5-1 into G flat or F sharp, just like earlier, and then 5-1 into D. Right? So you put that first 4 bars together, we have E minor, 5-1 into B flat, 5-1 into G flat, 5-1 into D. Okay, let's look at the next 4 bars. It is the same thing, just a whole step lower. So we're going to do the same progression, but we're going to land on C. Okay, so the 2 chord, what's a 2 chord in C? D. That'll help us to think about where to get started. Okay, so we've got D. Now a half step higher is going to give us the 5 of the first key we want to deal with, which is going to be A flat. Okay, so we have D minor, E flat 7, which is going to get us to A flat. A flat is our first home key, and now you want to think down in major thirds. So A flat, E natural, and C will get you to the landing point of these 4 bars. Right? So let's try this. We've got D minor, E flat is the 5 of A flat, B7 is the 5 of E, and then G7 is the 5 of C. Right? So you see how that works? So we find that 2 chord, bounce up a half step, that'll give you the 5 of the first key, then you can think down in these home keys. It takes some getting used to, it takes some thought, and it gets some practice, but with understanding how it's built, it can help us to move this around into different keys. Let's do that. Let's get into the final key here of B flat for this particular example that we're looking at. B flat, right? This should be familiar. We've already done this. We find the 2 chord, and then the 5 is a half step higher. So this 5 gets us into our first key of these 4 bars, which is, as you remember, G flat, right? Okay, so now we want to think, what's down in major thirds? From G flat or F sharp, we got G flat or F sharp to D, and then finally to B flat. Our mission now is to put 5 chords in front of each of those. We've got the 2 chord, C minor, D flat into G flat, A natural into D, then F into B flat, just as it was earlier in our previous example. Let's put this all together and just think about the root movements now. Don't worry about walking. These are basically 2 chords a measure, except for when we land on our final key of the 4 bars. But let's just play the root movement as it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, and then a 5, and then a 5, and then a 5, and then to our goal of D. Okay, we're going to start on D again. This is our 2 chord in C. Here's a 5 of A flat, 5 leading into E, and then a 5 into C. Our 2 chord, if we're going down in whole steps, it stays on C. So a 5 into 1 of G flat, 5 into D, and then a 5 into B flat. That gets us our countdown changes in the standard key that the song is played in. So now let's go in real life. Let's check out a Peter Washington walking line over the Coltrane changes for countdown. So let's play through it and then we'll talk through it a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. D, E flat, A flat, E7, E major, G7, C major 7, C minor 7, D flat 7, flat major, A, F, B flat. And where it's heading is to an E minor chord, just so you know. Let's play that again now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a lot of roots here. Here is a really hip chromatic descending progression. So what's happening here in this second bar? Peter is hitting the root of the B flat chord. He's walking down to hit the 5th of the D flat 7th chord, walking down to hit the root of the G flat major 7th chord, chromatically down to hit the 5th of the A7 chord, and then playing the A itself, and finally to D. This reminds me of how Paul Chambers walks over giant steps, where you can hear these in descending whole steps. We'll get a little bit further into that later. Let's look at the second line now. Starting on D minor. Got D minor, E flat 7. So he's really just bridging the gap from one chord to the next, but it's very smooth. And finally to C. And we're landing on C, so you want to walk towards that. Now here, this is interesting. He's playing from G flat or F sharp to a B, which initially you might think, oh, that might, playing a B flat would outline the G flat major 7th chord a little bit better, but it really works, and he repeats this on and on through the rest of this bass line too. So if Peter Washington's playing it, it's correct, and I want to learn from it. Let's check out another portion of a chorus by the great Peter Washington. This is countdown number 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. So starting off the same way I did the previous example. Chromatic motion. Leading back down to D. We're seeing very similar motion here. This is all moving pretty fast in real life too, so we're slowing it way down. So there is a great bassline example to get some ideas on how to walk over countdown. Remember, we want to hit as more often than not hitting roots when the chords change, but you can also find the 5th of the chords, especially of those 5 chords, and you can make smooth bass lines there. Now let's look at giant steps. We've already laid our groundwork of understanding the Coltrane matrix in relation to countdown. Giant steps is even less of that. It's basically taking 3 bars, or those 3 different keys, and moving it around in various ways. So let's just check out an example of giant steps as it relates to the key that we were doing countdown in. Remember, we started with a 2-5-1 in B flat, and then we checked out how to make that into the countdown progression. And so we've basically already done our work for giant steps, except we're going to take away the first bar. We're not going to think about the 2 chord anymore. We're going to get to the 1, which is, in this instance, is B flat. Remember to think backwards, or we're thinking the major thirds. So we're going to think about the key of B flat, we're going to think about the key of D, and we're going to think about the key of G flat or F sharp. And then descending, of course, that's major thirds down, which you can see right here in green. So that's the major thirds down. Each of those are keys of the moment, which happen really quick, and we're going to put a 5 chord right in front of each of those. So in this instance, we're going to start on the first key of G flat, and then put a 5 in front of the next key. So we've got G flat, A7 leads to D, and then F7 leads to B flat, of course. Right? So we've got G flat as our first key, and we're thinking about it. We're going to land on B flat, so you kind of have to do a little bit of forward thought and practice, of course, to get from G flat or F sharp to D to B flat. But practice your augmented triads. It can really reveal a bunch. When you start practicing those a bunch, you won't have to think too much about this particular aspect of it. So again, we've got G flat, a 5 chord leading to D, a 5 chord leading to B flat, and then we're home. Now let's look at the standard giant steps changes and see how they relate to what we've already done with this Coltrane matrix descending major thirds concept. Let's look at the first 4 bars. So we've got our first key of B major, but really we're trying to land towards E flat. So we're thinking, you could think that's a sharp 5 as our first home key. So we're going to go there, and then down a major third will get you G, down another major third will get you to E flat. Now what we need to do is put 5 chords in front of each of those. And if you think towards the bottom of the tune, there's an F sharp 7 leading into the B flat. So we've got F sharp into B natural, not B flat. And then 5, which is D7 into G, and then 5, which is B flat 7 into E flat. So now we're going to put a 2-5-1 leading into our next key, which is also the same chord progression going down a minor third. So we've got A minor 7, D7. This gets us to our second line. First chord is G. Okay, so here's our first home key of G major. Think down in major thirds. So we've got G major, E flat, and then B natural. These are our 3 keys for these 4 bars to think about. We've got G. Now we're heading to E flat, so you want to put a 5 chord in front of E flat. And then we're heading to B natural, so put a 5 chord in front of that B natural. Great. So our next 4 bars actually is, if you look in green, we're going to reverse the direction of the augmented triad. We're going to look at the green chords. We've got E flat as our 1 key, our 1 chord. G natural is our next key that we're dealing with. And then B natural is our next key. And then E flat. If you just play that ascending, you end up with the E flat or G or B natural augmented triad. They're all the same thing. But as opposed to the first 8 bars, which are descending major thirds, is how I think of them as descending, right? And then G, E flat, B. But now these next 4 bars are going up. Right? And I played that B lower, but that's the same idea. It's ascending major thirds. So we're going to hit E flat, and then put a 2-5 into our key of G. Now we're going to B natural, so C sharp, F sharp 7, B natural. And then we're trying to get to E flat again, so put a 2-5 in front of that. And then a 2-5 back to our first key of B natural, D7, G major 7, B flat 7, E flat major 7. 2-5 into our next key, which is going to be G, so 2-5, G major 7, 5 chord into E flat, 5 chord into B, 2-5 into the key of E flat. So now we're thinking about our goals ascending in major thirds. So our next one after E flat is G. So we want to put a 2-5 in front of that. G up a major third to B. So what's a 2-5 in front of B? C sharp minor 7, F sharp 7, B. Right? Up another major third to E flat, F minor 7 to B flat 7 to E flat. Then we're at that like home key. Now we just need to think about putting a 2-5 back into the front. Make sense? Now, another really common way to think about walking over giant steps is, instead of thinking that 5 chord leading into, so say for instance from B major 7 to D7 to G major 7, let's look at this. So 2-5-1s, right? A 2 and a 5 are, for all intents and purposes, the same thing. So instead of thinking D7, which is the standard chord change on beat 3, we could instead just think A minor and give us a little less thing to think about. And this is back to where we talk about the Paul Chambers walking over giant steps. So you could do this. Just going down in whole steps. So B, A. Now I'm playing this A as if it's like an A minor 7, but it's also just the 5th note of the D7 chord. Same thing here. When I go down to F, that's like the 2-5 into B flat. So F minor, B flat, but it works. And we don't have to think about that 5 chord being so abrupt. It's just another option to do there. So you could do that through all of these changes. Read this root progression with me, and on top you can see in parentheses the standard changes, and below are the substitute changes that you might want to think about. So we've got B major 7, A minor 7, G major 7, F minor 7, E flat. And instead of doing a 2-5, an outright 2-5, A minor 7 to D7 to G, we can just think D7 and make it even easier to play a line, right? So we've got B, A, G, F, E flat. Now just go down a half step, and that gets you to our next key as a 5-1. with a lot less thought, right? So the same thing here. We've landed on B natural. Now go down a half step, and that gives you the 5 of the next key we're dealing with. Right? Go down another half step from E flat, and that gives you the 5 of the next key we're heading to. Okay? Go down a half step from G, and that gets you the 5 of the next key that we're hitting, which is B natural. Go down a half step, and that gets you to E flat, which is what we're looking for that home key. Same thing again, we're trying to head back to B, so put like a little F sharp 7 right there, and you're good. Now let's check out Peter Washington's walking line on giant steps and see what we discover from this master. So play this with me. We're going to do it slow. Peter, of course, plays way faster on this, and this is coming from a really cool Ralph LaLama record, which you can find on the PDF below here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So just brilliant. Of course, like I was saying earlier, this is going way faster, but to have all of this put together the way that Peter Washington does it is just brilliant. So let's take just a section at a time and talk about what we're seeing. So of course, bar 1, we hear roots in octaves. Now he's going down, he's playing that 5th of D, just like PC did on the original recording, Giant Steps. So A natural, D, and then he's going to root, down to the 3rd. So this open G, idiomatic to the bass, that open G gives us a chance to shift up higher, which he's doing, to the root here. Then the 5th of A minor 7, the 3rd of D7, and then G. So he takes this concept here again, playing the 5th of the 5 chords. So it's a B flat 7th chord, but he's playing F natural, the root of E flat, and then the 5th of the F sharp 7. So here's that descending whole steps concept that can be really useful in bridging smooth bass lines. Okay, he's walking up, basically just walking up F minor 7 right there, which is another way to think about it, right? To the 5th of E flat, A minor 7, the 3rd of D7, the 3rd of G major 7. Here he's playing an A sharp to C sharp to F sharp to C sharp. Now I've got the chord changes written as C sharp minor 7 to F sharp 7, but I think he's likely just thinking about all of this being an F sharp 7, which we discussed earlier. So A sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, right? It's an F major triad going to B major. Here's this again, F minor up to B flat, E flat major 7, and then a 2-5-1 to back to B. Let's look at another example of Peter Washington walking on giant steps. So play this with me and then we'll talk about it. 2, 3, 4. Of course, we're slowing this way down, right? Big jump here. Beautiful line outlining the chord changes. So much of this too is his feel, his sound, his beat, and then of course note choice, and we're really just talking about note choices today. So let's play through again and we'll talk about it a little bit. So we've got bar 1, again roots in octaves. He's playing the root here, root, root. The 7th leads down really nicely to the 3rd of E flat, half step leading back into the root. Now here he's playing an F sharp. I've got the chord written as A minor 7 to D7, the standard changes we might think about. But if he's playing an F sharp on beat 1, that makes me think that he's really just thinking about D7 on that 4th bar, which is going to, of course, lead to G major 7. So we've got F sharp, A, D, A to G natural. Root, root. Now up to the 5th of F sharp 7, walking down B major. Here's that open G string, which can bridge the gap for register. So 3rd of B flat 7 to the 5th of B flat 7 to the 3rd of E flat. And we're going up. And that was basically just A minor right there, or thinking D7. So A, B natural, C, A, right? It's very simply just A minor, root 2nd 3rd. The 3rd of G major 7. He's playing an F natural there, which I think is just a half step leading into the 3rd of C sharp. It's not really in the chord of the moment. It would be an F sharp. F natural works though. So E natural, C, C sharp, F sharp, which is of course the 5 leading into the 1 of B natural. Half step into the 5th, coming down F minor 7 to the 3rd of B flat, and then a half step to get to the 5th of E flat there. Just so smooth. F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, B. So all of that is basically an F sharp triad, right? So by taking away the 2 chord or taking away the 5 chord even, it can help us to think about these changes a little bit quicker. So that's just some great examples from Peter Washington. Play those up to tempo. Go listen to him swing on these records. It's a big, huge, beautiful thing. So if you like what we're practicing here today, please consider subscribing to Open Studio's YouTube channel. Like the video if you like it, and click the link downstairs to get a free PDF of everything that you've seen on your screen here for practicing along and checking out. So my name is Bob DeBoo. Happy practicing. Thanks for watching. Peace.